Good morning. As you can imagine, many of you know the residents, Joan and Ron Hare. This group is very well organized. We've never had so much help with getting a show together. They're just terrific. And Roseanne and Monica have been terrific. We've got all sorts of equipment going here, and they've been wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to be introducing Joan, but I just wanted to put in a plug for this young man right here. And I looked on his website and whoa! Just as Dr. Dre is to rap and Armani is to haute couture, Bill Hare is to a cappella recording. We are very, very honored to have him visit with us today, and I'm going to turn it over to his very proud mom to get the conversation going, the story.
Thank you, Nonnie. My goodness, that was some introduction. All right. For those of you who don't know me already, my name is Joan Hare, as Nonnie said. You might know my husband, Ron, because he gets around up in the corner because he gets around a lot more than I do. So, and this is our son, Bill. And that is our son, Bill. And back in June of 1984, Bill was in a band. This guy owned a recording studio which hadn't been doing very well. So this guy and his two brothers bought the studio. But then they didn't have any money to upgrade the equipment. And that's where we come in. I had inherited a little money from my mother, who just passed away. And so we formed a 5-way partnership with the three brothers. And on the surface, Ron was very patient because on the surface of it, none of us knew anything, believe me, about running a business or about, we didn't know nothing about nothing, and he didn't engineer at the time. The former owner, Jeff, stayed on long enough to teach Bill at least the rudiments of engineering. And we didn't plan it this way, but within a few years, we bought out the other three partners, so it was just the two of us. We had the studio until December of 1996, so we had it 12 years. When literally in a light bulb moment, I suddenly realized that the technology had changed so much that we could let the rental unit go. Are you asleep? That we could let the rental unit go. I could retire, and Bill could literally take his clients home with him. In other words, build a home studio. So Bill Hare Productions was born. Bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Wow, it looks like church here. Everybody filed into the back first, and there's always seats up front. So you can't see, there's plenty of seats up here. So, well, part of that light bulb moment was that we actually, as a general recording studio, we didn't have any specialty. We recorded anybody who found us in the phone book. So one day I would have a classical string quartet, next day I'd have an opera singer, and that opera singer would happen the same day I have a punk band in there. And then I did big band. We had enough room that we had a 20-piece big band in there. We did small orchestral things. We did some pretty cool major things with lots of instruments. In 1989, I started doing more a cappella work. Stanford University started sending me all of their a cappella groups, which kind of became a full-time job. I realized I actually didn't need to mic a drum set. I didn't need to mic a big band. I didn't need to do very much. I didn't need all of the room that we had. And that was actually what was the light bulb moment, I think, for both of us, was that I wasn't working with these large instruments and things that just took up so much room. I would say that our studio room was actually about the size of this room, except it was maybe a little taller. So, you know, that's what we dealt with. And I was actually, yeah, and then I was actually, you know, for the most part, starting to work with like one person at a time, just doing vocals. So I needed, you know, a space about this big right here. And so at that point, yeah, the technology was changing. If we go back here, you can see all the equipment that we had to deal with here. This console actually came from Capitol Records. Recorded a lot of major hits during the 70s. And we bought it and brought it up from Hollywood in 1984, along with the original tape machine. The tapes are very heavy. These tapes cost about $200 a piece in the 1980s.
Wow.
Very expensive. They ran for 15 minutes.
Oh.
And tape itself is 2 inches wide because it took 24 tracks. In fact, that one's a 16 track. So that's why the tape is so wide. It's just basically a whole bunch of different recordings all lined up next to each other. So yeah, we brought that up in 1984. It was a technical nightmare. It was 1971 technology that was already starting to show its age, and luckily the original designer of that console, since that was the only one ever built, you know, was still around, and we'd fly him up from Los Angeles every once in a while when we didn't get any sound, and he saved us. We were also sharing a tech with Neil Young, who also lived in this area in Woodside, and so we would grab his tech as well. There were very few people left who, you know, could still understand the 60s and 70s technology that we were still using through the 90s. So that's the front door of the rental unit. You can see it was pretty high class. You know, we had a lot of locks. It was good. Before this picture of me, I was very young and innocent. I had absolutely no idea that I would be doing this one day. My training was as a musician. My goal in life was to be a studio musician, just to be able to you know, record on other people's music. And that art was just dying at that time, because synthesizers, MIDI, other things were coming in that were replacing live musicians. I actually had no interest whatsoever in engineering or producing music. It was not really on my radar. And I was working in studios actually as a musician. And every time I'd walk into, this was actually a very small studio, and this is actually the studio that we bought before we had the big console in here. It was an 8-track studio at that time. But I would always just walk by the big console and just say, oh, that's a lot of knobs. Glad I never have to do that. These are some more pictures of the studio. And this is about 1983. And so we had no idea at this point that one day this would actually be our studio. At this point, I was just a client. We were recording my band. I was telling my friend Jeff, who I would later be in a band with, but didn't know at that time, you know, what I wanted to have, you know, for my band. So yeah, completely different mindset in that picture than here, where I actually looked terrified. But by this time, I kind of knew what I was doing. There's about 2 years later, after we had installed the Capitol console, we had bought the studio, and Jeff, who was the former owner, now was technically an employee, and you know, and stayed on because none of the rest of us knew how to work any of this stuff.
Wow.
Yes. This actually is a picture after we did a little bit of work on the room. Kind of hard to see though. We did do a couple upgrades to the studio over the years. This is during a major rebuild in 1989 as we got rid of the very troublesome Capitol system and we're buying some brand new equipment for the first time, switching up to a 24-track system. This is just a flyer we put out. There was no internet, of course. There was no other way to advertise except for in our local newspapers, magazines, and phone book.
I gotta say, that was my part. I'm the publicity person.
Yeah.
And I was the studio manager too.
Yeah. Yes. She was the studio manager. Yeah. Otherwise, I would have folded way quicker than I did. Yeah. And we actually, I don't even remember what this was. You know what it was,
Some
obviously.
presentation songwriters, and our son-in-law, my daughter's, his sister's husband, the wonderful artist, and he did that painting.
Yeah, we're using cassettes here as a demo. That would just be a terrible thing to do these days.
Also, we decided to keep that awful name, Astral Sounds, just because it was an A in the phone book. That was important.
We could have changed it to Aardvark, then we would have been in front of Advantage Studios. All right, here's as we're pulling stuff out and getting that old console. And my friend Jamie, who's also a great engineer, and I are looking at this new console, trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to work this one now? Okay, this is going to be a special treat for all of you here, because you get to see my mom with an afro. So, I think this is that video. Yes, it is. Okay. So, this is a video that she made for our friends / relatives in Australia, I think. Was that what it was for?
For the Red Stones.
Yes, yeah, some friends of ours. Yeah, and my wife and I were, or my soon-to-be wife, was this before?
Yes.
Yeah. So this would have been probably January of '93.
Hi everybody. I would like to show you our studio, introduce you to my son Bill.
Hi, I'm Bill. I take very bad video. I'm an audio guy.
This is our board.
It's a Soundtrack CMX 4400. A Mac 2. Yes. With sound tools.
This is what we have now, an Otari MX80, and we probably will have it overlapping for a long time with the ADAT. The first 8 tracks of ADAT's going to go in over here.
We were switching to our first digital format at the
we'll
time.
build on it probably until it's a 24 track.
We ended up with 32 tracks.
And our effects here. Bill said we should have
Those
some
aren't our
background.
effects. These are our effects over here.
Oh, I don't know
That's
effects
our
from.
outboard EQ and compression and stuff.
Oh, okay. And here's the studio itself.
I still have that piano.
And that's one of our other engineers, Jeff Saltzman, one of our independent engineers, and they're talking to Bill.
Who's very successful up in
And
Portland
I'm in
these
the
days.
studio right now. These are IV poles I got at a flea market. They were pretty low for little things and stuff. Everybody's gone but me. It's an hour later, and I just wanted to show you these mirrors. We turn them out to make the sound more live. There we go. Out here is the little lobby where I work. Not fancy, but the studio looks like a studio, as you can see. We thought we'd be doing video work, but never really got into it, but I had the monitor put in when we remodeled 2 years ago and went 24 track. And out here in the other half of the building, it's really pretty funky. There's my sort of bulletin board wall.
We had a lounge
Logo.
upstairs.
And a
Into the
rehearsal
room
room.
that's our vocal booth, or we call it the vocal booth, but our isolation booth, but we
This is the close-up of the door.
actually don't use too often.
Well, it's good that it dragged. It helps isolate the
Better
sound.
sound wise. I think just by putting carpeting on the ceiling it might do it, or probably Sonics type stuff I guess we should use.
All right, and that was that's what the place looked like in the early '90s. And we did actually end up using that vocal booth. We did some other acoustic treatment to it. Actually, I think my mom designed the acoustic treatment just randomly, and it worked. She just kept putting more angles on there. And there's a promo shot of me in the studio there. This actually was taken for an ad that was in all of the trade magazines for about 2 years. This ad actually did pretty well for me, just for some notoriety, because people saw that this was the biggest recording industry magazines. All of them carried this ad for a couple of years, and this was an ad for the first affordable CD burner, which wrote at a blazing double speed for only about $1,000, or $10.95 list price. So the technology moved very fast. Now this is just gone. But I remember actually in '97 I went to France and stayed with another recording engineer, and he was asking me about my studio. He was like, what's your studio like? Where did I go? Oh, do you have like a trade magazine? Oh yeah, here's a mix. I opened it up. He goes, that studio. I always look at that picture and wondered where that was. So it was, it's kind of nice, yeah. More pictures of what that room looked like in the mid '90s, and then. We sold it, and in the interim, I built another room at my house at the time. And in 2000, I bought a house up in the foothills between here and Milpitas. It's on the road between Sunol and Milpitas, but it's actually more on the Milpitas side. I have a Milpitas address, but I live in the unincorporated part of Calaveras Road, which you see from 680 on one side and goes to Milpitas on the other. That is my current control room, which is built into where the garage used to be. So it's about, the whole studio is about the size of a garage. It's less than a quarter of the size of our first studio, and it's still too big for what I do. I do mostly vocal music. These days I rarely actually even have clients come to record, because most of my business is worldwide. I think the majority of my clients are in Europe, Africa, and Asia. And that's some of the shapes of the walls. Very bad pictures here. I'm also bad with pictures and video. I think this is yes. This one's louder. I'm just going to turn it down here. Oh, you got it over there. I'm going to save this for a second. I will go off on tangents here and go to my show and tell table.
Oh, you can have the lights up for a minute.
There we go. So, I am a Grammy winner. It took me 27 years, but I finally got one. I have participated in several more since then. Most recent one was for Pentatonics and Dolly Parton. Just won one for Best Country Duo or Group Performance in the latest Grammys. And I worked on that as well. And a bunch of these little Caro awards. These are basically the Grammys of the a cappella world. And to be honest, I'm actually more proud of my collection of these than I am of this, but this is more impressive to the rest of the world. But this is, you know, my peers and my, you know, my people. And I do work with pentatonics. If you don't know who pentatonics are, ask your kids and grandchildren, because they will know. Just received my first double platinum album this year. Yeah, 2 million sold. And I brought a microphone, just kind of, you've probably seen these in movies and TVs and things like that, but this is, you can look at these closer up later on. The microphones and the technology of recording, technology of the actual capturing of sound has changed quite a bit. The technology of actual recording of miking and the circuitry has really not changed at all, and it's actually preferred in the older style. This is probably the most popular mic out there now. It was designed in 1949.
Wow.
And it was built only until 1965. And now they're actually reissuing them, but it's still the best sounding microphone that you can get. And one of these, in the original form, you're going to spend between $15,000 and $30,000 for just one of these mics, and the reproductions like this are about $12,000. So they're quite expensive.
What's it called?
This is a Telefunken U47, also known as the Neumann U47. So this is the mic that Frank Sinatra, Nat King Cole, the Beatles, on and on and on. You know, that is the vocal mic, pretty much the king of all vocal mic. And what else do I have? For some reason, I think what I do is pretty silly, to be honest. My wife has a really important job. She teaches middle school, but for some reason, the stupid thing I do, people pay me a lot more money for it, and give me a lot more credit for it. So it seems like most of the time when I travel somewhere, a newspaper is going to do an article on me, and it's so funny. I've got so much press in so many different languages, but this one I just thought was so funny because this was an Italian newspaper. While I was working with the Swingle Singers, we actually took a vacation all together in 2012 to get us all on neutral ground so that nobody would be distracted. So they came from London, and I came from California. We met at my friend's studio in Italy, and we recorded the album in Italy. And during that time, the newspaper came and did an article, but for some reason the interviewer, she just said, "Hey, instead of taking a photograph, mind if I just draw your picture?" I go, "That sounds weird." And so 15 minutes later, she had this picture drawn of me, and it was pretty funny. And then I got to share it with Rupert Murdoch here. So it's yeah. All right, we'll go back to this thing. So
Now we can have the lights
Yeah.
down again.
thank you, director. Thank you. So over, skipping years and years and years, I really started focusing on a cappella exclusively, partly because I forced myself to, because I got rid of the big room that I could record drums and other instruments in. So I just concentrated on that and got more and more work in vocal music, and experimented more and more. Not so much because I loved it, but so much because it was there and it really bored me. So but it was a very good income. So I was pretty much a mercenary at that point. And as I experimented, almost to the point of destroying the art completely, people got more and more into this new sound I was creating. So I became, in the history books, a pioneer. which is awesome, but that was not actually my goal. My goal was just to destroy it and be done with it. You guys are familiar with the movie Pitch Perfect? This is actually the book Pitch Perfect that the movie was taken from. And if you read the book's actually about me and my friends. Yeah, and so I am, I have lots of pages in this book devoted to me, which was also a very weird experience, to be honest. Yeah, so as I did more and more of this stuff, and people started hearing it from far off, I got a good reputation. The one thing that I didn't ever count on in the future was the internet coming in, and the timing was perfect for that. Around the early 2000s, the internet became viable enough that that all of a sudden I had this worldwide market, and all of a sudden people from all these other countries were saying, "Can I work with you?" And I thought that was really cool, and so I just started working with groups from all around the world, basically over the internet. They send me all of their raw material. I took it and would do my best to destroy it and send it back, and they would for some reason be happy with that. So and they pay me money, and that was awesome. So it was great. In more recent years, this has become a big industry for people. It used to be I was kind of the lone wolf in this, and I was the guy. Now there are dozens, if not hundreds, of people doing what I do, specifically in a cappella. And a lot of people doing it very well, most of whom I trained, which is great. I mean, they're all like my children, but at the same time, there's now there's all this competition. And most of them are much younger than me. So I'm competing with mostly millennials, so I have to stay cool somehow. And but they had just these really great internet campaigns and knew how to design these great web pages and videos and things like that. I never take myself that seriously. My business card says owner/janitor, which is basically true. I had my brother, who was a videographer in Australia. We conspired to make this video kind of as a tongue-in-cheek, making fun of my competition, because they would do all this really grand stuff for something that's really dumb, a cappella recording. Just face it, it's not really that important in this world, but hey, it's good for us. So this is this became my promotional video, and it'll actually show you some of my work.
Ogni volta dico questa è mai più. Never wanted to be, no, never wanted to be your weekend love. Run to you. Great God in heaven, you know I love you. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Now, from the sound of what you're hearing, it doesn't really sound what you think of as a cappella, does it? No. I mean, I do everything from like punk, German punk here, you know. But everything is vocal here.
Gut ganz dichter, nicke ran.
So that is 100% vocals. Here's a great song you will probably know. This is an Italian group called Cluster, who are very good friends of mine. This is their representation of a big band, all vocal. So remember, there's no drums, there's no trumpets, there's nothing here except vocals, as will come in after this intro. Which I made to sound like an old record. Again, 100% vocal.
How many? Vocalists in that?
There are 5 vocalists in that band. Yeah, but they multi-track the recording, but they also perform live, and they do a version on stage which is very, very good. That isn't quite as produced as that. Here's actually more what they sound like live, so this is pretty much a live track with them. And here's the guy doing a saxophone imitation. He does it through his nose. This is a favorite of my mother's. This is a good friend of ours from Italy. Wrote and arranged arrange this song. A little bit of a rainstorm behind there. That's just me with a hose on my window. Anyway, that's a beautiful piece. So I have, I have way too much information here, so I will. What's that?
Got Jolene on there?
Jolene, I actually just mastered a version with Dolly Parton and Pentatonics together, doing Jolene. What is this? That's that. Okay. All right. So here is a video I made just for all of you, which talks about the studio and a connection, a worldwide connection between Stoneridge Creek and one of my artists. And this is the Swingle Singers we hear in the background. So this is you're going to talk about getting car sick with a video. The tunnel vision of the iPhone is a little tight here, but this is my control room. And so we saw my mom's little bulletin board at the old studio. I have my own, which has gotten very crowded. This group Basics here, you will hear more from it in a minute. So, yeah. I shouldn't have filmed this myself while trying to walk and open doors. But you can see why I do audio and not video. This is the recording room. You see that microphone's right there in the middle. And so this is, and then some old technology of 1950s 4-track. And that's the view out my window, looking at the bay. Need to trim down my trees. And some of the old equipment from the old studio. A little bit about how I do what I do. This is a band from Berlin, Germany that I work with quite often called Maybe Bop. And they always know exactly what they want. They give me a list beforehand. We want this part to sound like a heavy guitar. We want this part to sound like an explosion. We want this part to sound like a trumpet, etc. And then they rely on me to shape their sound that way. So here is a part of one song that we recently finished. Air guitar, always part of my job. Now, it sounds like a rock band, but it's done with lots of effects and processing. This is what the guitar tracks, which are actually vocals, sound like on their own, processed. Being helped by this virtual amplifier plugin. Basically a guitar amplifier. You will hear the vocals actually sounding how they did more in their natural state. That's how they sent them to me. This is the Danish group Basics that I mentioned earlier. They were working on this song and they were not quite satisfied with how it was coming out. They just felt there was something missing. We just had a basic backing track and a lead vocal.
Walk Walking from the bench back to my car. His words keep echoing in my head.
And the song kind of kept going on like that. They were still just trying to find a direction for it. And they actually decided to leave it off the album. At one point, the lead singer who wrote the song had an idea to tie in the actual voice that he was listening to, the character in the song who was actually missing from the song, an old man on a park bench. He got in contact with us and said, can you find somebody to record this part for us? I'm not sure if they wanted specifically somebody with an American accent, or why they didn't find an old Danish man to say it, but
I asked them
they
this
seemed to
morning, it was
want
because they didn't want a Danish accent.
they wanted more of an American accent, I would guess. We can look in the most unlikely places to create a hit sometimes, and we actually found it right here at Stoneridge Creek. So my parents did a recording session using an iPhone.
Listen, the birds, they remind us that we're not alone in this world.
Listen to all the background
Listen,
noise.
listen to the birds. They remind us that we're not alone in this world. Listen, listen to the birds. Do you hear them? They remind us that we're not alone in this world.
Take after take.
We then cleaned up the audio a little bit from Palmer's tracks.
Listen. Do you hear them?
And then we added bird sound effects.
Listen. Do you hear them?
And then, to put it all together, we made more of a soundscape out of the whole thing, so it didn't drag as much.
Listen. Do you hear them? The birds? We're not alone in this world. They remind us of that.
Walking from the bench back to my car. His words keep echoing in my head. Driving home alone.
And just having Palmer's voice in there actually gave the song the context that they were looking for, and now it's going to be on the album. Is Palmer here? No? Oh, there he is. Yeah, you're a star now in Denmark at least. In fact, this will be their last album after being together for 22 years, and there is much mourning going on in Europe because this group is breaking up. But they put 22 years into it, and there's always a time for that to happen. So you will be part of their last project. This is some of the press I've gotten in different. This is from a fan magazine of a group called the Wise Guys, who are very, very, very popular in Germany, and I mixed, and I mixed a couple of their albums, and one of their albums is called Achterbahn, which means roller coaster, and it goes, what makes a German roller coaster in California? And it's an article about me and how I work with this German group, and another dear friend of mine who's actually Italian was in the group at the time, and he was actually in that really nice textural song I played earlier, Nevermore Will the Wind. Article in Norway, I got. This article talks about how I was teaching people to make traffic sounds, which wasn't actually what it was about, but they caught a little bit of it. A Swedish group I work with that They talk about me in the article because they were nominated for one of these glass awards here. You saw that already. Yeah, that's a better picture of the drawing that she made of me. Another German magazine. I've been actually getting a lot of press in Germany lately for some reason. And I don't know what that is. That's the board being pulled apart. Yeah, I think this is just extra stuff. What is this here? Oh yeah. That's my friend Eric Bozio from. So let's see, is there anything else here? Oh yeah, I wanted to actually, speaking of,
That's
okay.
during the 1990 or 1980.
Yeah, the 1989. So this guy is one of my unlikeliest best friends.
He has visited here, and so has
Yeah,
Joan
yeah.
from Denmark.
Yeah, he's actually visited here at Stoneridge Creek, and
So has
and the soloist on in the Danish thing also spent. He actually spent a few days here, right?
Overnight, he and his family.
Yeah. So this guy here, we are very abusive to each other. He's just such a bad influence, and we have a great time. And I spend a lot of time over there in Italy with him, and he spends time here.
He wrote Nevermore with the.
And he wrote that. Yeah, he wrote that really nice song. Believe it or not. So one thing, they were signed to Sony Records, and they were working on a Christmas album, which we had mostly done. But they needed one more song to be done, and they had part of something recorded, but they hadn't finished out any of the ideas yet. And Sony, while they were on tour and they were in, they were in some weird country somewhere where they weren't anywhere near their home base in Italy, and they're recording. Sony got in touch with them and said, "Hey, we're moving up the release date by 2 weeks. We need the finished album." And they were stuck because they were halfway through a song, and I had everything else done. So they contacted me in a panic, and they said, "Look, here's what I have on my computer. This is what I have so far." Pretty enough, but it's very bare bones. It was just kind of the basic backgrounds and a lead, but it had no other moving parts or whatever. And so he said to me, he goes, "Look, take these tracks, do whatever you want on top of them. Take parts from our other tracks, build something, build a soundscape." So here was my chance to just completely freak this guy out, because he was under a lot of pressure to get this done, and I knew I could do something. So my thought is, okay, what does that song sound like to me? I'd say hip hop. So I built a little hip hop track around it, and I thought it was so hilarious that I contacted a friend of mine in New York who's a rapper and said, "Here, do an MC thing over the top of this thing, because we just want to completely freak these people out." So here's what I came up with.
Yeah. You are now tuned into the sound, to the one and only Cluster, ladies and gentlemen. So serious right now.
They had no idea this was coming.
Cluster track, I'm running back on track. Can you feel that? So you know it. You know you love this.
I said that to him just, because I knew I was going to do something for real later, and just to freak him out, and that freaked me out. So I sent it to him, and I didn't hear back for like a day or two, and I finally found him online and go, hey, so what do you think about that? He goes, yeah, we thought that was interesting, but it's what it is, so we sent it to Sony. I go, no. I go, no, you were supposed to send it to Sony. I go, and so then Sony gets in touch with them and says, that's the best thing on the album, that's the lead-off single. So you never know, and even I didn't know. All right, I think we can go into Q&A or something here, or just lunch.
Roseanne, we can have the lights.
Thank you, Director.
Can we put the old booster up or just turn it off?
Oh, yeah.
Or just turn it off?
Ah,
When I think of ensemble, I think of Chanticleer.
yes.
Are you doing anything traditional like that?
Oh, yeah. I work with the King Singers, who predate Chanticleer. I've worked with many of the Chanticleer people. Yeah, I do some straight choral stuff.
Never more of that. Beautiful.
Yeah, but that's not quite a Chanticleer sort of thing. But I do a lot of that sort of stuff as well. But I'm more known for the more cutting edge stuff.
How about Dolly? Dolly's music.
Dolly Parton?
Yes.
I just so basically I get to do things that tie in to my a cappella work. So I actually mixed a song on the new Brian Wilson album, which is great because the Beach Boys were always my heroes, and it was actually the Beach Boys that I mixed. And that came because it came through another a cappella person, Peter Hollins, who was doing a duet with him, who I've worked with forever. And of course, I work with Pentatonics. Pentatonics and Dolly Parton teamed up on a version of Jolene, and and I did the mastering on that. Outside of that, that's my one brush with working with Dolly, and I didn't actually meet her. I just kind of tweaked her voice a little bit. So yeah.
Did Bobby McFerrin kind of predate this stuff? Yeah. He did all the voices himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was one of the pioneers as well. It was a different sort of style, because there was no trickery there. Bobby is a talent that is, you can't reproduce. It's only him. So you can't really start a style of Bobby McFerrin, because Bobby's it, mold is broken.
Bill, that Christmas song that got sent by mistake to Sony, how long does that process take you? Is this something that gets done in an hour, or is this weeks?
I
guess it varies.
Well, that was a joke. So I of course didn't spend a lot of time on it. I actually did, after Sony liked it, I did do some tweaking on it. But I spent an hour and a half maybe on that, just because I did repeating loops and things, and then I just sent an email to my friend and sent him a copy of it. Just said, here, just rap over this thing a bit. And he did that, sent it back to me. I put it in. So really, I didn't spend a whole lot of time on that. Usually, I tell clients when they ask for timelines what it takes to mix something, depending on the complexity and and what it is they actually send me. It's 2 to 4 hours is usually what I spend on a mix.
So you were in Italy with the group doing this album.
Yes.
What's that time process? Does that get done?
Oh, that's,
in a day?
no, that's more, we were 12 days or something there.
Wow.
And, yeah, that, recording's a lot longer. But for the most part, I'm not involved in that process anymore. I am, you know, they send me all the stuff, all the raw material that they had done, and then I just put it in a whole different order and change it up. So I'm just dealing with a whole bunch of disembodied voices.
You work with groups from various countries that speak various languages. What about, how do you communicate? You don't speak 7 languages, do you?
No, I speak 14. No, I only speak one. The thing is,
people here who do.
right? For the most part, most of my clients speak enough English that we can communicate. I have one client in Turkey who doesn't speak English, and we have a really good time talking through Google Translate. And sometimes with just absolutely hilarious results. You know, so okay, say that again with different words because I know that you're not a rooster. Yeah, it's kind of fun, and I get to travel a lot, and sometimes it's most of the time I'm actually traveling recording. I'm mostly going to music festivals because I'm just well known in this particular thing, so I usually teach classes. I was at the Aarhus Vocal Festival in Denmark last week, and I will be at the another one in Italy that that last guy is putting on in September. And I've been to many places. There's all these different scenes all around the world.
The Swingles, every year they have.
Swingles, they have one in London every year, yeah.
How about your music background? You're trained, or a lot of it instinct?
So there's instinct, of course. I grew up around music because my dad over there is, you know, there was always a band playing in the living room, and you know, he's
very genetic.
Yeah, it's genetic.
He
Yeah,
got
he's
that from me. He got that from Ron.
yeah. So
You gotta
he's
have the genes.
yeah. He's actually a really good musician. You might not know it, but he is. And yeah, I got that from him. And then I studied. I did, you know, starting in early high school. I just started learning the craft of playing music. Started at San Jose State as a music major. Majored in jazz performance on electric bass. My goal was to be a studio bass player. I was a pretty decent bass player and getting onto the first call dates by the time this opportunity came up to buy this studio, which was, you know, I mean, I could have chosen something more realistic, like being an astronaut or president. But, you know, we, you know, somehow it worked.
When you have other people participating, such as the rappers and Palmer and all sorts of other people, doesn't that get complicated with rights and royalties and all that sort of thing?
Depends on what it is. There's a lot of things that just kind of happen where, like, I was in a movie with Glenn Close and Hayden Panettiere and Martin Short and Cheech and Chong as a voice talent. I got paid $1 for that, happily. It's just because there's sometimes there's things that are just so quick and easy to do. I mean, I didn't even know about the Palmer recording until it was actually done. You know, and you know, it's like, you know, hey, can you come over here and do this, whatever.
And that is original music too. Much of what you do is original music, so there's not copyright. They get their own copyrights.
Well, no, that's not actually what she was asking, though. That's like mechanical licensing and that sort of thing. But you're talking about performance. You know, you're like, hey, I performed on this. Do I get a cut of it? And the answer is sometimes. Depends on the deal you make on that. A lot of the times there's not a lot of money being made in the industry as far as record sales anymore, you know, outside of things like pentatonics and things like that. So a lot of the time the artists are kind of breaking even and making more money from performance. But yeah, so like in the case of me in this movie, the person doing the soundtrack for this was the movie Hoodwink 2. It was an animated. It was an animated film, and at the last minute, as they were doing the final, what they call the final layback, putting all the audio together, they got a call and found out they lost the rights to one of the songs, the Kung Fu Fighting by Carl Davis. Some of you guys might remember that from the 70s. So they needed to recreate it, and so he's quickly recreating it down in Los Angeles at the Tadeo Studios, and doing a backing track. And he called me like 10 o'clock at night and said, "You're the only person I can think of right now. You know, can you get somebody to sing this thing?" And I tried to get a friend of mine who was a really good soul singer to do it, but it turned out he was on tour out of the country. And so my friend who was working on the movie said, "Can you just sing it? I've heard you do something like that before." So I quickly did that one line, and I became Hayden Panettiere's ringtone on in this movie. In fact, the movie was, what's that?
What was the movie?
It was called Hoodwinked. Here we go. Is the screen on?
don't know anything about. And it's just one of Julian's.
The sister finds her own path, her true inner power.
So you'll hear,
You start to run
hear me in the background, just the
Oh, come on.
ringtone,
Really?
singing Kung Fu
That's why
Fighting.
you touched him.
What brings you to jail?
I like touching him.
That was me. And you want to hear it again? Yeah, it's supposed to be the cell phone, so it's kind of soft. It's louder in the theater.
Sorry, I should take this. Hello? Nikki?
And what was actually cool on this is I actually got the first music credit in the credits at the end. So right there. So I was happy to do that for $1. I didn't even expect to get paid, but they had to pay me something as part of the rules. So I got a check for $1, just put it up on my wall. I never cashed
I
it.
tell you, Palmer's not even getting $1, but he's gonna get his name expressed.
Yeah, so I'll have his name on the album, for sure. He'll have his name on the album. Yeah. So, yeah, that's how that works. Anybody else? Is it time for lunch? Oh, there we go. Oh, no, we got one.
Do you have a lawyer in the background with some of these complicated bills?
Every once in a while, but not usually.
The performers do.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there's some, it depends on the level of stuff. I mean, you know, do we need to have a lawyer in this stuff? And a lot of times, no. A lot of the laws are pretty, they're pretty cut and dry.
Certainly Pentatonics was the.
Yeah, Pentatonics does, and there's, because there's a lot more money involved in something like that.
Great job, Bill.
Thank you.